So in this video on Dynamics 365 Sales, I'm going to talk about data hygiene processes. So in other words, what we want to do is have really good quality, reliable data within our CRM system that we can trust and use. So in order to do that, we need some data hygiene, data management processes built around that. Now, let's go into the system and I'll show you what I've added, because rather curiously, maybe Microsoft doesn't seem to have sort of standard fields for this. So this is something that you need to think about yourself in terms of what you think you might need and add those into the system, and then build those processes into your sort of core portfolio of processes for use of your Dynamics system. So if I go into a record here, I opened a test record, Jane test, and I'm in the summary area here. Now what I've done within the details area here, if I click on that tab and scroll down a little bit, I've added a section with some fields that would support sort of data hygiene type processes. So let's just talk about those. Now this isn't encyclopedic. There are multiple data cleanse processes you might want to have in place, and there are various different ways of doing it, but this will give you a flavor for the ones that I typically see and the ones I think are important. So firstly, these fields I put at the top here. Now these are standard Dynamics fields. They're not always displayed on the form. So I would always want to know when a record was created, who it was created by, when it was modified, who last modified it. Now, that's quite important information. I say standard fields, they're automatically updated by the system anytime there's a change, and it's just a case of putting them on the form. But it gives me a really good clue. How did that record get into the system originally? How long has it been in the system? When was it last modified? When somebody actually last worked on it? I mean, if this is, if we've had a CRM system for a long time, and I think this is part of the problem, is that a lot of people have had their CRM system in place for years, or maybe they've got a new system in place and sort of migrated data across. It's really important to understand how recent that data is, and should it be in our system at all, and should we be relying on it? And these fields give us some clues around that. So I would always display those, but they're standard fields. They're just not always displayed on the form, but I would always make sure they are displayed somewhere. And then I've added some here. So the first one I've added, which is kind of a tick box field, it says met data quality standards. So I would suggest for some organizations, you might want some sort of screening process, so that for every new record that's created, you monitor the data quality in the background. So every time somebody creates a record, if this field isn't ticked, then that automatically appears in a view, and you have a team member or team members who are responsible for validating the data quality. Ignore and save that. Validating the data quality in the system. So that gives them visibility of all new records. They can check that record. They can change the data quality, improve the data quality, add to that record if they need to. That's a very good way of sort of trapping new records are added. And as soon as you've checked it and you're happy with it, you can just click yes, and that no longer appears in your view for management. So that's one thing you might want to do. That might not suit all organizations, but it's a good way of improving the quality of data that gets into your system. The next one, you've got similar sort of tick box here. I put in flagged for deletion. So I would recommend, for most people, you do not want everybody having delete rights. Generally, as a standard setting, I'll sort of take delete rights away from everybody but admins. I don't really want anybody mass deleting data from the system, either accidentally or by intent. So generally you want to security control that. But data does get added to systems by accident. Maybe we put in a duplicate record or something like that. I just want to flag that for deletion. I can just click on that box and flag that. Somebody can pick that up. I might want an additional field here for flag for deletion reason, where somebody just writes down why they think that record needs to be deleted from the system. So a good way of getting rid of unnecessary data from the system. So then the next one is suspected duplicate. Again, yes, we've got duplicate management features in the system, And there are capabilities around merging duplicates together. However, it's not as intuitive as it could be. It is prone to a user misunderstanding things and merging the wrong records together with the wrong data together. Generally, I'd say I would security control that to certain people who have the rights to handle duplicates. Again, therefore, to facilitate that process, I'd have a suspected duplicate flag that somebody can flag. That appears in a data view, and then somebody can perform that data merge on their behalf. Again, I've added a sort of free text field for them to be able to sort of note down what the duplicate record, the other duplicate record is, and some details. So that's another piece of data hygiene reflected in these fields. The next one I'd talk about is, record last validated. This to me is really, really important in the sense, particularly if your CRM system's been around for a while, we've had data in there potentially for quite a long time. Is it up to date? When did somebody last check that? Now, I see this all the time, is that people do validate their data in the CRM system, but they don't, they don't indicate on the record when it was actually last checked. So if you're not careful, you can end up performing the same task all over again 6 months later. So this is a very good way of saying, right, I checked this record. It was checked today on the 10th of May, and it was validated by, and then we can look up to the user and put that in there. So I know exactly when that record was last checked as being accurate. And that's quite an important feature of sort of maintaining data quality. The next one I've got on here is data quality issues. So, it might be that we want to just have somebody flag there's a data quality issue. Again, you might want to have staff that are responsible for maintaining data quality. They can see that this record's been flagged. They can look at the contact data views, pick that up, and make the various amends. The last one that I've got here is previous record. Now, I've done a separate video on this. Now, what will often happen is your contacts will leave. They will leave the organization they work for. We're talking in a sort of business to business type context. So a person will work for an organization, but obviously, people join companies and leave companies. And so that is fluid. So we need a mechanism for tracking whether somebody has left an organization or not. Now, what I have seen, and the reason for the other video, is that sometimes people will reparent a contact record from one organization to another. Now, to me, you shouldn't be doing that, because you're moving valuable history that's relevant to one organization and moving it to another organization where it's completely irrelevant. And that's probably not something that you're going to typically want to be doing. So if your contact leaves, don't reparent it. Flag it in some way as having left. Now, you can either use the deactivate and just deactivate the record. That's one way of doing it. Or you could add an additional field yourself, say, current employee, former employee, or something like that, some sort of flag. And obviously, then that sort of flows through to, say, your marketing team. They understand that this is no longer a valid record that they should be using. The other thing, so that's what I would typically do. If they then crop up elsewhere, you add them as a new record. I say you don't reparent, you add them as a new record. But if you want to sort of have some visibility of the previous relationship, the fact that we have dealt with them before, and there might be useful information there with their dealings, I've put in this field called previous record. It's a lookup to a contact record, and I can establish a link between those two records, their current contact record and their record at their previous employer. And that's going to be a very good way of sort of following through that sort of chain, particularly if there's somebody that we had a good relationship with and we want to stay in touch with, but we want to understand that historical context. So those are some of the fields that can be added. Now, these work with supporting views. So if I go to the contacts area and I go to my contacts views, I just put some in. So, flagged as having a data quality issue. I think I put one in there, or did I? Can't remember. Let's have a look. Yeah, so I put that record and flagged that as having a data quality issue. So I can have all these views set up in the system. So ones that flag for data quality review, ones that flag for deletion, ones that flagged as suspected duplicates, etc., etc. So I can predefine those as system views or personal views, whatever, which are shared with other people. and everyone can see that, and that gives them a chance to manage that data in the system effectively. Now, you may have different data hygiene needs, you might have different processes, but the important thing that is that you've got the fields set up within the system and the process is well established, that everybody understands them and follows them and uses them, and you're able to get as high a data quality as you possibly can. Now, you're never going to get to absolutely perfect data quality, that doesn't exist, but there are various degrees of perfection. So it's important that you've got those processes in place. They're well established and they're well supported by what are often additions to the system rather than, again, using sort of out-of-the-box Dynamics features. Anyway, hopefully that's been helpful. If you are a Dynamics user and you feel you're not getting quite as much out of it as you would like, and you kind of want some guidance on potential next steps, feel very free to reach out. I've put a link below. Always happy to have a chat with people about their situation and see if we can point you in the right direction or potentially help. Anyway, I say hopefully that's been helpful. This is one in quite a number of videos we've done on Dynamics 365 for Sales on the channel, so feel free to check those out. But thanks very much for your time today. Hopefully see you again soon.